You wake up in the morning, head hurting, eyes blurry. I went a bit far last night. You pick up your phone and you see a message. He was involved in a car crash last night. They rushed him to hospital, but he didn't make it. Suddenly, you find out one of your friends who you were really close to was involved in a car crash where a drunk driver sideswiped him at a robot or traffic light, and they can never take that back. As you get into the story, you realize that that friend the person who hit the car, was actually your friend's sister, and they can never take that back, and they'll live with that for the rest of their life. The things that alcohol makes us do, stupid decisions that live forever. Now, welcome back to the Identity Human podcast, and I know that that was quite an intense welcome back, but it is about being able to make sure that we get your attention and we realize what we're actually talking about here. So the usual intro, dum 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 dum. We're going to do this with Don, and that's about it tonight. Because I think I want to speak about something that just came up, and it was alcohol, because it is something that is rife um, everywhere we look. And I wasn't going to speak about alcohol tonight. I think it's a big part of culture, society, the things you do, the way you've been brought up. I wasn't going to speak about it tonight, but I opened up emails just before I came on, and someone sent me a manuscript because they're trying to champion, let's raise awareness around alcoholism within organizations. So that's got to do with the leadership business, and it made me think, and it actually made me think really hard because a bit of my history, a bit of my past, obviously been in professional sport as a rugby player, whereas we know that there's quite a big culture of alcohol in and around sports and wherever you go. In South Africa, where I come from, in Zimbabwe, you go and have a braai, you put up some meat, and you take some alcohol with you. And then the usual story is I've never been exposed to moderation except for my parents. So my parents never really drank. I actually don't think, I think I've seen in my whole life my dad drinking one beer, if that, and my mom drinking some Amarula, as in you pour a tot, put 2 blocks of ice in, and then she couldn't even really finish that. So there's never been a big thing in terms of my family upbringing, but definitely been exposed to it through sport, through going to a boys' school, through all of the different avenues that alcohol usually creeps its way into any person's life, right? And until you look back and you look around, you realize that it's in everything. You don't really notice how it presents itself. So we're Identity Human, and we're going to talk about anything that interests and affects or positively or negatively affects people. And so that's going to be part of tonight's one is we're going to talk around alcohol. So some of the things we'll talk about is some of the obvious side effects, maybe one or two things around sleep, just a reminder on some of the things it does for health, mentality. We'll mention role models. I'm going to ask you why you do it. If you drink, if you don't drink, this isn't judgment, by the way. We're thought provoking. That's what we're doing because I don't have a problem for or against. I know that there are some people that are trying not to do it, and there's some people that don't have a problem with it. I don't think that there's anything wrong with healthy discussion that helps you think about things just in one way or another. In case you are either the person that's drinking or the person that we're going to speak about in terms of role models or influences. So we'll mention some of the positives. So why does it even have a place? And then why stopping it is so challenging. And then I'm going to throw in one or two stats, which are quite interesting from this book or the manuscript that I've been sent to read. And I just think, you know what, it adds a bit of value and it's just something to talk about. If we're here to discuss, we're here to think, we're here to go and pass on some message that might be for you or for someone that you know. So let's get into it. I first want to start with probably what's going to be the most interesting bit is why stopping alcohol is so challenging. And this might be interesting because if you don't drink, you may not understand why it's so challenging for others to stop. And by the way, I'm not talking about being an alcoholic and all the things that come with that, because I do think that that's a discussion for another time. It probably is needed. It needs a platform that's a lot more in depth, a lot more specialist, a lot more thought that's gone behind it. So I just want to be clear on the level that I'm talking about. And I'm talking about social drinking. I'm talking about not someone here that has, if you listen to this and you have an alcohol problem, some of these things might help. Don't get me wrong. Like that's what we endeavor to is empower mindsets around whatever it is that you're going through. But I'm not going to say that anything here is medical advice, is professional. It's just my thoughts, my chit chats, and hopefully helps you have some of your thoughts and some of your chit chats. And at the end of the day, if you learn something, let me know. If you don't, let me know. If I'm wrong, let me know. It's not about me, it's about the message. So, why stopping alcohol is so challenging? This can be, things that I've experienced, things that I see, things that you hear other people talking about. And I think I'm going to talk around two main things, and it's going to be identity. We've mentioned identity before in our previous episodes, and if you don't remember what we spoke about, go and listen to that because it talks about, I drink alcohol is owning an identity, and if you're trying to stop, then if you're still claiming I'm a drinker, I'm no longer trying to drink. Um, that's you trying to avoid something. What you resist persists. So it's about how do you separate the fact that you used to drink to something that you're looking forward and you don't even consider I'm not a drinker anymore. Versus I look forward and I drink sparkling water, for example. So it's about how you change the words in your head, bringing in NLP kind of stuff, and actually just thinking about the drivers behind it. And it's also old habits. So where identity is important is old habits also then start to come up. And when I mean old habits is, and I mentioned early in the beginning, is sport creates a habit around socializing and drinking, as well as family gatherings where you've got a barbecue going. And what's the thing you bring over? Let's bring over some beers. We can have some beers, which turns into maybe some spirits depending on who's around. So those kind of old habits. So if you naturally think, oh, I'm going to have a barbecue this weekend or a braai this weekend, what's the first thing that comes to mind in terms of ingredients lists? We're going to have some meat, we're going to have some salads, we're going to have some crisps, and we're going to have some booze. Okay, so it's just about identifying where I don't know if you want to call them triggers, the inroads that they have, how they get in there, and how if you're trying to stop and your social circles, so the next thing we're going to talk about is influence, the social circles that you have all have these triggers around you. It's going to be another step that you're going to have to think about. Because when it comes to influence, I think this is the one that I found has been the one that we have to put a lot of thought to, and that's called it's the courage to know that you're inadvertently going to be challenging people around you when you stop trying to drink, especially if your social circles do like to have, even if it's a casual drink, one or two at the pub, or they go more. If you are going and then you're going to say, I'm going to stop drinking, but you still want to hang out with your friends aren't going to be as self-aware. They're not necessarily going to be part of the journey. So they're going to be like, it's the usual things of, oh, you're boring. Oh, come on then. It's not going to do anything. What? It's not actually that bad for you. Just have a couple. Don't you like me anymore? Insert any other friendly banter that comes in the way that your friends usually do because in essence, they love having you part of their group. They love who you are and they love being around you. But when you start to say, I'm not drinking, what you're doing is essentially you're challenging them because they might have a partner that doesn't want to drink, but they haven't necessarily found the courage to stop doing it. And so you can sometimes come across as making them feel bad. And that's why they come across the way they do. Or you could also have really supportive friends that actually go, I respect the fact that you're going to do that. I won't offer you a drink. And it's how you manage those relationships constantly because you may have your close group of friends who say, guys, I'm stopping drinking. And they could support that. They might not. Depends on how good your communication is with them. You're then going to be the influence to them to help them stop drinking because I think actions speak louder than words. But they're not the only influence you have because you're going to go to a braai that's going to have someone else there that you don't necessarily know that well that's going to drink. They're going to offer you. And just at the moment that you're weakest, that's going to come and they're going to offer you. So the point is, I think in terms of influence, there's a lot of aspects to consider when you go, do you know what? I actually don't want to drink anymore. Because you may have the willpower to do it on your own. If you stay in your house and you only drink sparkling water or juice or whatever it is you drink and it's not alcohol, that's going to be easy enough because the only person you have to convince you in stopping drinking is yourself. But as soon as you've got outside influences, you're going to have the willpower not to do it for yourself. And you're going to have it to withstand the loving intentions of your friends wanting to be part of what you're doing. And it's generally going, let's drink. That's what we do. That's how we do things. Because humans are, I've said this before, we're social animals. We're troop animals. We want everyone, we want to fit in. So as soon as you as the I'm no longer drinking. You're not. You're going to have the courage to no longer fit in necessarily until you've made a change within that group. And if that group doesn't want to change, that's when you have to really consider, like, is this the group that's for me if they're not supporting this group? Or am I strong enough to stay solid to this non-drinking element that I want to do and influence my friends to come my way? And it's going to take longer, and it's going to take challenge, and it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes, and I might lose friends along the way. So it's almost then going like, how important is this journey of yours to stop drinking? Because you might lose a friend or two along the way. And are you prepared to do that? Now, obviously, I'm going to say 100%. If this is something that you want to do, it's because it's serving no good for you. And if a friend doesn't, is keeps challenging you, keeps tempting you, then essentially that's when you realize that that friend's no good for you. That doesn't mean you can't have friends that drink and still hang out with them. And I think it's about being mature enough to have those conversations, that they accept that you are doing it your way, but you guys can still have just as much fun as you did before. Because again, that's when another bias comes in. Like, you can't have as much fun when you're not drinking. This relaxes me. This, there's so many different ways that um, drinking can creep in on the old, sayings that come in, and I think that that's something to be interested to actually think about. So, one question someone asked me, we're training for 3 peaks, and someone asked, like, we were talking about going down to just stop at a pub on the coastal path, and the person said, "Oh, I'm going to go and get a pint," and then his girlfriend said, "Oh, Don, you obviously don't drink, do you?" And I said, I had to be very careful, because I've that person that goes, "Yeah, I don't drink," and then they go and sit down and you see them drinking, and it's like, "Oh, come on, man! Like, you've got to own up to this now. Let's be real." And I said, I no longer say I don't drink, because that's not entirely true. Like, I think it's, if you've got extremely good balance, I think some people just don't have it at all, and that's fine. I just said to the guy that said, you don't drink. I said, well, no, I'm never going to say I don't drink, because I can't guarantee that there's going to be some extremely special moment that I'm willing to um, put, for half a day, put aside my extreme version of not wanting to drink, to ensure that I create a memory with someone who's going to last them a lifetime. Because there is always a balance in life. There is always a balance that you've got to decide. And sometimes things mean a lot more to people because they're on a different journey. And it is then understanding, like, where's your boundaries, and where are you going to put that? So I just said look, I don't necessarily say I don't drink. I just say I don't I don't consider myself a non-drinker. I don't consider myself a drinker. It has to be a special occasion that I have to weigh up in my head whether this is worth it or not. And as of yet, I haven't had a drink this year. Not that I'm counting, not that it's a special thing. And I probably, if I didn't drink the whole year, I also wouldn't put it. I wouldn't walk up to you and go, I haven't had a drink for 365 days. It's not something that I place pride in, if that makes sense. And I think that there's an interesting journey to go on there, depending on where you're at. Is like, if you're saying I haven't had a drink for 2 weeks, I haven't had a drink for 4 weeks, it's like, why are you counting? First of all, because that tying identity to the old you. And then also, is that the same thing that you're inviting what you resist persists? But I don't know. So again, I'm still on this journey. It could be completely wrong. It could be right. That's just some of the thoughts I'd like to share, like I said. So some of the other stats I'm putting in, especially if we're listening to this, there's some of the younger generations seem to be doing it well. They seem to be learning from the older ones. So no or low alcohol brands sales are up. And what I thought when I saw that is like, why not just normal drinks? So and the point is, why do we go for a 0% Heineken instead of a juice or a soda water or a soda and lime? And I think it comes down to this, is like, a zero alcohol drink allows us to still fit in without challenging anyone else around us. Because if someone that is used to you drinking sees a beer in your hand, they're going to think it's a beer. They're not really fussed about that it's got alcohol in it. It's just, in their mind, monkey see, monkey do, if that makes sense. Like, that's not an insult. We all are monkey see, monkey do. We see someone else still drinking a beer, what we think is a beer. That doesn't challenge us. That doesn't challenge someone that's drinking when you're not drinking. Whereas if you walk around with a soda water in your hand, that's almost like putting it in their face, going, look, I'm not drinking and you are. I hope you feel bad about yourself. Because unfortunately, as much as we can raise the self-awareness to go, it's okay. Like, if you want to not drink or not drink, I don't mind. There are still people that are on their own journey at different times of your life and their life, that's going to challenge them, because that's just the part of the life that they're in. That's the journey that they're on. And that's where I think, like, why is non-alcohol brands going up rather than just soda water brands going up, or juice brands, or Coca-Cola? I mean, I wouldn't even want to recommend that. It's just a personal opinion. But it's because it allows us to still fit in without openly challenging people. I think that's where there's a good sweet spot. Um, so I just wanted to add that in as a thought. Then, like, finding the midpoint. What did I write? I said moderation, sorry, is a thing, especially with the younger generation. So the stats say that they put in is younger, between 25 and 34. I've just missed that bracket. They say it's like 34% say they are reducing or moderating their alcohol. And, I'm not exactly sure where these stats come from. And, people could always lie when they put their answers down on the stats, but you've kind of just got to go with it sometimes. It suits the narrative at the moment. That could be a bias. And then 18 to 20-year-olds are the most likely generation or age group to be teetotal. And I think, like, when I read that, I was like, isn't that fantastic? Like, imagine it would be so much worse if it said the 18 to 24-year-olds are the most likely to commit themselves to Alcoholics Anonymous or die to alcohol-induced accidents. Like, I got weirdly excited when I read that the 18 to 24-year-olds are the most likely generation. I think it was like 33% as opposed to the 22% population norm, to be teetotal. And I said, that's fantastic. That shows that us as a society, we're learning. Like, we're learning that alcohol has some drastic side effects and some permanent things to it. And I think, like, for me, that's one of those, like, unsung hero stats that, like, I'm hoping grows more and more as time goes on. And then there was an NHS stat that said 42% of young women, and that's between 16 and 24, don't drink or have not done in the last 12 months. And I was like, I love that, because I know that maybe just in my time and this is just confirmation bias, as I only see what I can see, is like there was a big thing between, like, when you get to like 15 or 16, alcohol becomes quite a thing that's expected to drink. And I think that that's important. And, like, this brings me over to, I wrote, role models. So we come over from the stats and the youngsters, like, who are the youngsters learning from? Those being good role models. Are they learning the bad lessons? Because you can be a bad role model. And what I mean by a bad role model is you can teach people some important lessons through your negative actions. So you're still a role model. You're just a negative role model, i.e., don't do this. I'm doing this. Don't do that. So I'm drinking loads, and this is what happens. So therefore, you learn not to do it. So that's what I saw. That's what I call a negative role model. Or you can be a positive role model, which is actions speak louder than words, and you just go on with your good character, whatever role model mode or model you want to fit into. But talking about role models, like, who is watching? Like, you are an influence whether you like it or not. Your friends, you're an influence to your friends. Your friends are an influence to you. If you're a parent, you're an influence to your kids, and they are watching you all the time. So when you're cracking open a beer, sitting down to watch TV, your kids are picking that up. And all it is going, is that a good lifestyle that you want to show them? Yes or no? It's not a positive or a negative judgment. It is what it is. Like, we've seen it. We've all done it. But it's going, like, you have to start thinking about these things, because if you've got kids, they are the future. And what do you want them to see? Now, with my rugby background, obviously, I go, let's draw on some stories. And I went and gave a talk at one club, and they were giving prize awards, whatever, at the end of the evening. And I don't know if this may be a more British thing and this was more popular, but I'd never seen it before. Never seen this before. But there was an under 16 age group that were all getting served alcohol. And they were all like, there was this pride of place that now they're in under 16s, they're getting pints of alcohol poured and they're part of the club. And it was great because that was part of their culture. But at the same time, I was like, at 16, if you are playing quite high level rugby and you want to get to the top, why are you making alcohol part of a thing that you do? Yes, there's a lot, and we'll come and talk about positives to it, but I've also seen people's careers ruined over drinking. And those are the things you don't talk about. And I think that's where it's important, is like, what kind of role model are you being? What kind of role models are you watching? Because actually, if you want to make it to the top of something, understand that there are guys that make it to the top that they cut out drinking when they know their balance, or they drink and then they go and work super hard the next day to get that all out of their system. But you don't necessarily see that. So it's like, what are the unseen things that people are doing to mitigate the side effects, etc., etc., and how are we breeding that into the younger generation? I think that there's lots of things that we've got to consider other than just what we see on the surface level, if that makes sense. Now, one question I'm going to ask is like, this might be a challenge, is like, why do you do it? Like, what do you drink for? I wrote some positives because I think it's like sometimes you can really take an extreme view, and we've always got to take both sides. Is like, I think it does very good at breaking down barriers a lot quicker than not having it. So where you see team building getting done, especially like, and this is from a sports context, is in the right balance. It can speed up the closeness that people have because they share memories, their inhibitions fall down. And if you do it in a safe environment, it can be very good for a specific intent of team building. Also, it may come across as relaxing, but obviously, if you look at the health stuff, like if you want to go into the dopamine levels, it's something across like 20 to 30 minutes of a high in terms of dopamine hit, and then you've got about 3 to 4 hours of low moods, etc., etc., etc. So it's almost just understanding like the after effects of alcohol. Are they actually really worth it? Yes or no? And I also think it's one of those that everyone has to go through a cycle of some sort. You have to go through a journey. You have to experience things and understand what it's like before you can not do something or choose not to do it. So this is why I'd never sit here and go, you should do this, you shouldn't do this. Like, these are my thoughts from my journey. No one's perfect. I used to drink, and I don't like talking about it. I never, if you looked at my Instagrams or my social media, I never put proudly put me drinking. I'd actively avoid it because I'm like, that audience that shares on social media, that's youngsters all the way through to older people. So it's something I had to be very aware of. So I do think that there are some positives in the right circumstance, but on the whole, it's just, I want to bring it back to like, why do you drink it? I can't have fun without it, and I think that that's a bias because we've actually learned that that's the fun way to do things. But actually, you can have fun without it. We just haven't given ourselves the chance because we're so guarded. We're so not necessarily so insecure, but people are insecure to just be themselves because there's also banter that comes along. There's ways that you have to fit into a team or a social setting, and sometimes it's the wrong social setting. So we go, oh, I'm just going to drink, and then we all fit in. So it's just really going like, why do you do it, and what biases are we using to reinforce the fact that we use it as a coping mechanism? Or you might have someone that says, oh, don't be so boring. Oh, Don, why are you talking about this? Or so-and-so, why are you not drinking? Don't be so boring. And I think that again, this is where it's like, you're going to have some courage if you want to stop drinking, or you're going to have to be swimming upstream, and that's okay. And I think it's understanding the long-term benefits of what you're implementing. And it's not just the external. Like, actually, whether you drink or not, it really doesn't matter. It's just about what are you developing inside that's going to help you further along as you develop in life. And if you can have develop the character to be able to say no, that means you're developing the discipline that you're going to need to do stuff that you don't want to do. And that's where it really helps. That's where it really helps you succeed where others might not, because you have developed the ability within yourself to hold your own boundaries that you want to implement, if that makes sense. So we often say that leadership is the lowest form of behavior that we accept, and I say it's within yourself. So leadership is the lowest form of behavior that you accept within yourself, because if you don't accept something within yourself, you find it very hard to accept it within other people. So that's where you set the bar. So you set the bar within yourself, and you set the bar towards others, especially in your leadership position. And some quick fire things, because we've been 24 minutes, is health-wise, it obviously affects immune system, heart, liver, cancer, a brain. Like, there's so many different elements where if you actually thought about it, you'd be like, why on earth am I doing this? And again, if someone's here going everything in moderation, it's like, guys, what is moderation? Because even if you have one drink in the evening, that's going to affect your sleep, which was the next thing, because it affects your neurofiring because it's a suppressant. And it might think that you might think that it's relaxing, but actually it's got negative effects the next day. And if you add all of those up, region beta paradox, the small things always add up. It's actually going, well, why not just not have it? Because what if the everything in moderation is any drink is one end of an extreme, and we just don't think it is? So Elon Musk did a really good example where he says you had the left and you've got the right in terms of politics in America. And then you had people that sat in the middle. And when they weren't so far apart, it seemed okay. But then the left got very left. So they moved, say, a meter to the left, if you're holding your two fingers up and you've got the midpoint, they're 10 centimeters apart, and your left hand goes a meter to the left. So now you've got a big gap. You've got like 1.1 meters between your two hands. So you've now got the left that's gone extreme left, and you've got the right that stayed where they are. And remember that midpoint person that was sitting on the 5 centimeter mark. They haven't moved. But because the left's gone so far left, those people that sat in the middle now seem like they are on the right. And I really love that because that applies in so many different examples that I see. So if we are talking like, alcohol moderation, it's like, well, what if the extreme is, I don't know, is already drinking alcohol and the midpoint is just not having it? I'm trying to think of what the other extreme would be. What if the midpoint was one drink every month? But because we don't think it is, because we're not drinking 5 drinks a week, we think that, I only drink every weekend is moderation. But actually, you're already in the extreme. I know there's not clarity in that, but I'm hoping you get the concept. So I always say, make sure you're thinking for yourself. And I think there's someone that's just said, like, in the comments in the chat, say, I don't know, I think I'd rather have a pint than a shot of heroin. And that's like saying, I'd rather drive on a motorbike at 70 miles than 180. Like, no one's going to go 180 miles. So why are we talking about it? So we're not saying, we're not going to compare like a shot of heroin is a completely different argument. So it's like, we're not talking about heroin or beer. So therefore beer is safe. That's obviously going to make your argument look good. We're talking about alcohol versus not alcohol, or what is moderation. So keep it within the context that it needs to be. And it's just a really good example because I know that there are people that will think like that. So it's just an important point or thought to talk about for those of you that are listening, because you're going to be faced with other people that do genuinely think that. I know that the person in the chat that said that was just a Christmas joke, which is funny, but I've heard that before. That's why I picked up on it. So people would say, it's better to be drinking this than doing drugs. And it's like, well, yeah, of course it is. And that's another part of, like, some people take that seriously, and that's an important aspect. Like, part of the challenge is you're going to have people at all different aspects of life and different viewpoints. And yeah, I suppose, I was going to talk like side effects can be like, it's just, one moment lasts forever. One decision when you're drunk, losing inhibitions, making dumb decisions. You think about the fights that people have, and, the car accidents, the drink driving, all the things that come into it, like the self-hate, the things that you say, those all have lasting effects, but the alcohol always wears off. And if we can actually just think about it and just go, why am I doing it? What purpose does it actually serve? You're probably going to find it's not really serving a purpose. Even when you go, but it relaxes me, and saying, well, there are lots of other ways to relax. We just need to learn how to do them. And yeah, we probably got to the end of this and it sounds like I'm hating on alcohol. But I think that everyone's on a journey. But I know that there's so many people that I've spoken to that go, yeah, I really want to stop. I really want to do less. And then 2 weeks later, they're back to where they are normally. So I'm kind of bringing this conversation up so that hopefully it spurs on some thoughts with any of you that have been in that cycle. The circular thinking of, I want to drink, I don't want to drink anymore, or I want to cut down. But then you just go back to type and it's going. Just think about why that's challenging. Why is that challenging to keep up? What are the influences around you doing that make that harder to maintain? And then which part of your old identity, which part of your old habits are the ones that keep giving you trigger points to actually drink? And again, I think it's just being curious. So it's the same when they're trying to get people to stop smoking, they say, just be curious about how it tastes, how it smells. You realize you don't like it. So just be curious about the alcohol as you're drinking it, what effects it has, how it makes you feel 4 hours down the line or the next day, and just go like, is this genuinely what you want out of your life? And remember, this is the Identity Human podcast. So we're here to empower mindsets. We're here to raise self-awareness so that we can actually go on and shine our light. That brings us to 29 minutes. We've got 1 minute left. If you're still listening to this this far in, you're amazing. You just know that you're amazing because they're obviously taking a genuine interest. So I want to end off the same that we always do. Remember, Ubuntu, we are who we are through others, but don't give away your bricks. So I'm going to look after me for you, and you look after you for me. And if we can both be the best version of ourselves, then we're both the best version of ourselves for each other. That's how we're going to lift each other up. So thanks very much for listening. I appreciate you guys. I'm very grateful for you. If you know someone that might need to listen to this, share it. See what they get out of it. Have a discussion, rightly or wrongly. It's just a thought provoker. All right, have a great week, and we'll see you in a week's time.